Welcome to Thursday Thoughts, your weekly dose of real, honest conversation on all things personal growth. These are the chats Lucy and I love having every week over on Instagram. They're unfiltered, unedited, and always rooted in practical tools and a dose of inspiration. Let's dive in.
So I'll pass over to you because this one was your idea.
Okay, so this one, well, I was thinking about this one as I was doing my physio exercises this morning, which are very, very small and people looking at me whilst I'm doing them and thinking she's not doing anything because they're so kind of like, just like tiny little movements.
Right.
And I thought to myself, do you know what? It's so easy not to do these things. And are they actually even working? I don't know. But actually, what I thought of that for a theme today would be just like it's those small actions that we take when no one's watching behind the scenes, which actually make all the difference. They all add up. And we've talked a lot about small steps, taking small actions, and they all work. But I think this is a topic which is so important for all of us because often we take the big actions and so everyone can see and it all feels really we're moving forward, but actually it's those tiny little steps that we're doing when no one's watching which are the things that count more than anything else.
So true.
And I know that these small little physio exercises I'm doing, which look a bit weird when I'm doing them, they are helping, and it's just like I've just got to keep going. But I also know how easy it is just to sack it off because they seem almost insignificant, that it's like, why bother? So it's about how do we keep on track with those small actions on a consistent basis to help ourselves move forward.
Yeah, you're so right. I love this topic actually because it's so true that it is those very unglamorous things that we're doing behind the scenes that nobody else sees that are actually the ones that are moving the needle. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, it's just made me think of an image. I saw this image recently of two ladders. So one ladder had very small rungs, so just little rungs, and a guy at the top of that ladder. And the second ladder had the guy at the bottom and massive great gaps in between each rung, just obviously showing this idea of taking small steps gets you to where you want. And it's so true. And I think what can be so difficult, of course, is that it is those little, small, consistent steps that we have to take that are potentially really boring or potentially don't look like they're doing much. You have to do them over and over and over again. It is those steps that are actually making the changes, making the difference to our lives. The question is, how do we stay consistent with them? Because it's not always easy. Mm-hmm. But I think that there is something so satisfying about, for me anyway, about kind of knowing all of the things that I'm doing behind the scenes that nobody else gets to see. But just having that kind of faith and that knowing that you are moving in the right direction. And it might not feel like it sometimes, but you know that if you just keep on taking step after step after step, you're going to get there. And ultimately, the only people I think that don't, quote, get there are the ones that stop taking the steps. Like, they quit. Because if you don't quit and you keep taking the steps, they might not be straight. It might not be a straight line. But if you just keep moving forward little by little by little by little, you're going to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big point. You don't have faith. You've got to believe in where you're going, because otherwise, what's the point? So having faith and believing and trusting in the process that it is going to get you where you want, that's absolutely key.
Yeah.
To keeping on going. And I also think that you've got to, it's almost like I don't know, for me, it is just kind of you've got to be disciplined. It's not very sexy, that word. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to commit to yourself. Yeah. I am going to do this. And that, I think we find, it's easy to commit to yourself maybe for a day, maybe for a week, maybe for 2 weeks, but it's that consistent commitment. So that, I am always having to tell people this is what I'm doing, this is the program, and I do, it's a bit boring for my members of my family or friends that like this is what I'm doing, but I constantly have to reaffirm it to them, to myself, so that it's like that accountability to keep doing it. But for example, these physio exercises, to be honest, no one's interested. It doesn't really, it's like I've just got to do it. I know I've got to do it, but then my end goal is to have a bats of fitness and legs that working. So I suppose that's that is my end point, and so I'm going to do them. But it's just what I'm also learning is, and I know this with exercise, I know this with meditation, breath, I know this with everything, is to get it done first thing in the morning. And we say this all the time as well. But my God, if you miss that window, I find if you miss that morning slot before the day gets ahead of you and stuff happens in the day, it's really hard to pick it back up again.
Yeah.
So for me, it literally has to be one of the first things, things that you really want to do, you've got to get them done first thing in the morning. And that might mean getting up a bit earlier. But I find if I've done them first thing in the morning, then I'm more likely to do it again later, do the thing later on. But if I miss that morning session, I don't know what it is. It's so weird. It's literally just like, oh God, well, I've missed it now, and it's not going to happen. I don't know why that is. Why it's so much harder to pick it up. But
I'm exactly the same, Polly. I feel exactly the same if I don't do these things in the morning. Like if I don't meditate in the morning, I'm not meditating at any other point during the day. Even if I easily could sit down for 10 minutes, I just know that I'm not going to do it. But just going back to what you were saying about how often these little steps that we're talking about are really not sexy. I think part of the problem is that not only that, but we can often feel like they're not getting us anywhere. Do you know what I mean? It can so often feel like it takes time to see results. Excuse me. I think that's part of, excuse me. I think that's part of the problem sometimes is that to get anywhere in life, so often we're having to take these little steps that you can't see anything immediately. Like your physio is a classic example of that, right? You're doing these tiny little movements. You can't see fuck all happening, and you probably won't for a while. But again, it's about trusting the process. I think that's so key,
Yeah, exactly. But it's like anything we're doing. It is. it really is those invisible little moments. And you always talk about writing a book, and I think this is a good one because actually, it's just thinking about that end product. If you don't write, even a sentence every day, if you were to write a sentence every day, you might get there eventually. Okay, it might take a very long time, but you're still going to get there. Eventually, but if you're not going to do anything, you're not going anywhere. So it literally is. You have to keep taking the steps and moving forward, and otherwise we're going nowhere. And I think it's really important to remind yourself of, where do you want to be in a month's time, a year's time? Because actually, that's what I keep at the moment. I am literally visualizing myself.
Eyes on the prize.
Yeah, in a year's time, if I don't do this, then if I'm still where I am now, my God, that would be horrendous. But I know I'm not going to be. I know that I'll be moving but I've got to do this stuff now to get there. So eyes on the prize. Where do you want to be? And times, as goes anyway. It's gonna pass. We might as well do the small steps. So it really is. I mean, what do you do, Lucy, in terms of the things that you want? Are those steps or those moments in your day that are moving you forward? How do you keep yourself moving? How do you keep yourself accountable?
Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, I think you mentioned the word discipline. I think it's very simple, and people don't want to hear this because, like I actually did a mini-sode called "Discipline is Not Sexy" quite recently about this exact thing because it's not. But at the end of the day, if you are not disciplined, then you're just not going to do the things. So I think that is the first kind of key thing. You have to be disciplined. You have to hold yourself accountable. And I also think it's, you and I have talked before on here about what is your why? What is the reason you are doing this? And I think for both you and I, talking about your knee and fitness and all of that, but also about our kind of businesses. Like, I certainly know where I am aiming to get to. I know why, I know what, I don't necessarily know how, but I know why I want to go where I want to go, and I know where that is. And I think when you have a very solid, very firm why, it keeps you moving forward. If you're flailing around, not really knowing the point of what you're doing, then how on earth are you going to maintain that discipline, that aforementioned discipline? You're not. So you've got to have a really solid reason for why you're doing the thing that you're doing. And one other thing, actually, is what I think about it that I meant to mention earlier, is that I think what we forget, and you and I have talked about this before as well, that we live in a world these days where everything is so fucking instantaneous. We think we think we should have things like now. We think you should, get this now or get that now. And yes, the world has moved forward, and there are certain things that, yes, you can order a whatever overnight from Amazon or the same day or with Amazon Prime, whatever it is. Yes, of course, certain things we can get much more instantaneously these days. But ultimately, I think anything really worth its salt is still the same as ever, that it takes time and it takes effort and it takes discipline. And what I wanted to say is that we forget that the people that we potentially see who look like they're, really successful or they've, quote, made it or whatever, what we forget is those people, those moments that we see are just moments in their lives. Those people behind the scenes are also putting in the work. It's like you can't avoid it. You can't avoid that.
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes forget, we obviously see people's highlight reels on social media and all the rest of it, but we forget that we don't see those people potentially getting up at, 5, 6 in the morning, doing whatever it is that they do on a regular basis. Like most people, I think, who we look at and think, oh my God, you're really successful. They're all pretty disciplined behind the scenes. But again, it's those things that other people don't see that count way more than those big moments. Like, let's take the book. The book coming out was one day, one freaking day. Guess what? Life goes back to normal, right? Everybody forgets. It's done. Dio and he done. But actually, what led up to that one day of being able to say, oh, I've had a book published with Bloomsbury, was all of those tiny little steps that I took for the 2 years leading up to that moment. And it's the same for anyone doing anything big out there or doing whatever it is. We just forget that behind the scenes, people are being consistent. Like, I look at some people that I follow on social media, people who are running online businesses, really successful online businesses. They are showing up every fucking day without fail. Every goddamn day. And I think part of it is that actually a lot of people just can't be asked to do the work. It's really simple. People can't be asked. They cannot be asked to do it. And again, this is why it's so important to have a really strong why, because if you don't have that driving you on those hard days, then you're just not going to bloody do it. You're not going to take those steps. Going back to your issue, your why is you want to be running that freaking goddamn half marathon or marathon next year. That to you is incredibly important, and you feel it in your heart. So that drives you. If you didn't have that, if you were someone who sat around watching Netflix all day and wasn't really very active and didn't really give a shit, then they might not be as religious about these exercises as you're going to be, because they don't have the same why as you do.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so weird. I've learned so much about myself with this, because I literally had to give myself a target, a goal. At the moment, I'm just starting to walk normally, not even, I'm walking without any crutches or anything. And I've signed up to the Brighton Half Marathon, which is in next February. But it was interesting that I felt the need to do that. But I feel that is like set me a real target, and that is my why, because it's like, right, that's something really good to work towards. And I think sometimes having a goal it's somewhere in the distance where you can keep reminding yourself why you're doing it. If you haven't got a deep why inside, can be really helpful. So for me already, and interesting, I was telling a friend about my plan. I said, right, well, what I'm going to do when I'm signed off to be able to start moving, maybe start jogging a bit, I'm going to do the couch to 5K. I've never done that before. I'm going to download the app and I'm going to do that, which I'm quite excited to do, because it's just literally just seeing, that's going to build me up gradually. Then I'm going to do some park runs, as that's 5K, which again, I've done loads of in the past. I haven't done for a while, but I'm quite excited again to go, oh my gosh, if I can complete a 5K, that would be amazing. And then gradually I can then, hopefully when I can start running 5K relatively easily, then I can start building it up and then moving to and going into some half marathon training. And I was telling my friend this and she was like, do you know what? I'm going to do it too with you. So she really isn't someone who runs a lot or does, but I think when you break it down and it's like, okay, I can do that. Okay, it's small steps forward, but each breaking it down into chunks so that there's a little goal which you can hit before the big goal can actually really help keep you on track. So, for me, it is literally jog. Walk first, go for a big walk first, then it will be to jog and so on. And so that you can celebrate those little landmarks, because that's going to make you feel good and that's going to spur you forward. But at the moment, for me to go and run a half marathon, that just feels too big right now. But so it's about breaking it down, thinking about what you can do and working towards that. And eventually you'll get there.
Totally.
Yeah.
I will only ever recommend brands that I know, love and use myself. And one of those is Ancient and Brave. Honestly, they've become part of my daily habits. The very first thing I do every morning is pour myself a big glass of water with their true hydration in it. It feels like such a simple ritual, but it really sets me up for the day. And I know I'm properly rehydrating with their blend of electrolytes and minerals, especially before I exercise, which I always do in the morning. Then later on, when I make my coffee, I stir in their true collagen powder into the coffee. Now, it blends in straight away, no fuss, there's no taste, and collagen is something we naturally lose as we age, but it's so important for our skin, joints, and overall vitality. Now, I'll be honest, Ancient and Brave may cost a little more than some of the tubs you'll spot on supermarket shelves, but the difference is you're getting the highest quality ingredients, sourced with integrity and tested to a higher standard, and absolutely no nasties added. That's why I trust them and why I think they're worth every penny. And because I want you to be able to try them out for yourself, I've got a special offer for you. As a listener of this podcast, you can get 20% off your very first order. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes and pop in the code POLYW20 at checkout. They've got more than just collagen and hydration too. They've got creatine, they've got blends, supplements. So it's a perfect chance to explore their range and make the most of that 20% off.
It just makes me think of living an intentional life, which is something that I just feel so passionately about. I talk a lot about on my podcast and in my membership. It's this idea of, I know this is going slightly off on a tangent, but it's really the idea of, are you living your life by default or by design? Are you just allowing the kind of winds of life to just blow you around and you don't really, just being taken wherever? Or are you in the driver's seat and being intentional about your life? And I just think this is so, so, so key, because no matter who you are, what you're doing, where you are in your life, I think human beings need some kind of direction. All of us. Even if, you're perfectly happy in your job or blah, 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 whatever. I think, we're meant to evolve. So we all want to have that thing that we're heading towards. It doesn't have to be anything major. It doesn't have to be some big, crazy dream. It can be something relatively simple. But I really think that it is so important to have something that is pulling you forward in your life. And that's not to say that you can't love your life exactly as it is now and just be enjoying the day to day. That's obviously really important too, and being grateful for everything that you have right now. But also we need that thing that is pulling us forward to just keep taking those steps, because human beings we're not meant to stay the same forever. We are meant to keep evolving forever and ever. We literally are. We are creative beings. We are creators, and I think it's very easy to forget that. So I just, going back to what I said just now about, are you living your life by default or by design? And I think it's a really, really interesting question to ask that probably not that many people have asked themselves. And I think so many of us, we kind of just follow along with what everyone else is doing, or we just get sort of, I'll just see what happens. And I'm not saying that you can't have any space for just seeing what happens in your life. I'm not saying that. It's perfectly fine obviously for things to happen spontaneously and all the rest of it. But that's a separate thing. But I just think we want to have our eye on something that, some kind of direction that is pulling us forward. I really think that whether we know it or not, we need that as human beings, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And I think another important question to ask yourself is really, where actually, gosh, I think my podcast episode coming out today is about this. It's like where, it was more about sort of looking after yourself, self-care, doing the things that the things behind the scenes, which actually make you feel good, which light up your soul, which help you show up as the best version of yourselves. Where are you making excuses? But you know all the stuff, but where are you actually making excuses for yourself not to do them because they're a little bit boring, they're a little bit tedious, they're not perhaps always, the first thing you want to go to. And they are a bit of an effort. But actually, ask yourself, am I making excuses not to do the things? Are you someone who's constantly saying, oh, I really ought to do that. I know I should do that because I know it makes me feel better. You hear it all the time. Like, oh, I really ought to get fit, or I'm really unfit and I wish it's like, where are you making those excuses, and where can you actually start to put some just small little steps, moments in your day in place, which are going to help you. And it doesn't have to be big actions, but I think lots of us aren't truly honest with ourselves. We think that we haven't got enough time. We think that we're not able to do it. We think that we can't. And I would argue always, it's just because it's not a priority for you right now.
Show me a phone.
Yeah, it's not a priority for you right now. So you either stop saying, oh, I need to do that, or I wish I could do that, or I ought to do that, or I should do that. You either stop saying it and you're just happy with your lot, or you just stop making the excuses and you carve out that time and you do the thing.
100%. I truly believe that ultimately we, as humans, we will do the things that we want to do. And if we don't do it, it's because we don't want it enough, I think, ultimately. Because I know myself that I will make time for the things that I want to do. I mean, for example, as you know, like I hate to use the word busy, but let's just say that my life is quite full at the moment. But if an opportunity came into my life that I was like, fuck yes, I would absolutely go, yeah. And I would make time for it. I mean, actually, something came, funnily enough, I was asked the other day to get involved with something to do with International Child-Free Day. I'm not big on these days. I'm not one of these people who makes a big deal out of, oh, this day or International Women's Day, or I sometimes feel a bit guilty like I should, but anyway, I don't. And it was, asking to get involved with something to do with this day. And initially I was like, can you just give me a bit more detail about what you're thinking about? Anyway, the long and short of it is that I just knew in my heart, I was like, I don't want to make time for this. This is not a priority to me. This is not how I want to. This is not something I want to make time for. But ultimately, if something came along that I really wanted to make time for, I would make time for it. And going back to the show me the phone comment, anyone who ever says I don't have time, I call bullshit. Because I wonder if you go into your phone and you look at how long you're spending on social media or whatever it is app on your phone, we all have time. I don't care who you are, how busy you are. We can all find 30 minutes in our day by not doing something else. But again, it's what do you prioritize? And like you so rightly say, either shut up about it or do something about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because the truth is, no one's going to do it for you,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. No one's going to come and rescue you. No one's going to do it for you. Only you can do the things, and that is tough love, but it's the truth. If you want to do something, move forward. If you want to improve things, if you want to feel better, only you can do it. So it's about, right, you've got to find that discipline somewhere. You've got to find that commitment within you and just take those small steps, those small actions. And don't ever think, cast it off as insignificant, however small that step is. Don't cast it off. Just do it, because then you just get that momentum. It's about building the momentum. I'm just looking at a couple of comments here, Lucy. So from CJD.54, retirement pulls me forward 4.5 years, solo dates, and learning new skills on my own. Woohoo! Love that. Oh, damn, I get to find time to paint the fence. So
I've got to find time to paint the fence buffer.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, you'll be able to find the time to do the fence. So yeah, I think it's the long and short of it is just find those commitments, do them in the morning, find the time to do those commitments, do them in the morning, and just really notice where you might be making excuses, and just do something about it.
And remember that it's all of the stuff that you're doing in the background that is going to lead to whatever it is that you want. It is all of those little steps that you're taking when nobody is watching, the boring things, the unglamorous things, the monotonous things, the dull things. It's those things that you are doing that are ultimately what is kind of pulling you forward, or what is moving you forward. And it's just one of those things that we just have to suck it up. But again, anyone you see who, let's just take somebody who's living the kind of life that you want to live, for example, guarantee that person is doing things in the background that you don't see and you just don't know about. And we haven't used the word consistency, I don't think, yet in this conversation, but consistency.
Yeah.
The end.
And that is why I'm just going to plug it. But my membership, you have a membership as well. But that is why I really believe in, my Inner Space membership. I show up 3 times a week, and Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, to do a practice where you literally remind yourself of your intention for the day ahead, the week ahead, who you want to be. It helps you to regulate yourself in a way where you're starting your day from the place you want to be. You get to choose. And unless we sometimes stop to remind ourselves of these feelings, of how you want to feel and your intention for the day, we don't do it. It's very easy just to kind of go into autopilot mode. But that is why I'm such a believer in consistent practice, short, consistent practices, which keep you accountable. So there are so many things out there to help keep you on track. So whether that's some sort of membership or whatever, find the support you need, because there is so much out there to hold you in this, to help you move forward. At the moment, I'm fortunate. I have weekly physio sessions, which is great because that really helps me keep on track and I don't want to fall behind. And, she's keeping me accountable. What I do with the women in the inner space is I keep them, I keep showing up. So they keep showing up and they people prefer to come live because it literally is right. That is what I'm doing, and they sign up, and then it's holding them accountable. So find your thing, whatever that might be.
Yeah, and it can be, you can, it can be accountability through a friend, for example. I mean, there are lots of things that you can get accountability from somebody you know or a colleague or whoever it is, but accountability is just, it makes so much difference.
Yeah.
Anywho, 8:59, we've somehow filled the half hour again.
Perfect.
Well, we'll be back. We'll be back next week talking about what's anyone's guess, quite frankly.
Exactly. Amazing.
All right, babe.
All right.
Have a good day.
You too.
Lots of love. See you later.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, babe. Bye.